Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Mahoney, and I work with Sunrise Community for Recovery and Wellness. And I want to share a few thoughts about peer support from my perspective and peer support from a macro perspective on what it is as a job and how it's affected my life and how I've affected other people's lives. And we'll try to cram that into 10 minutes. So people ask a lot, when did you first learn about peer support? I thought it was too good to be true in 2007 that I heard about this job that you could access mental health and substance use job arenas by having lived experience. I said, can't be for real. It's a pipe dream. But it wasn't, because it was up here. I was in Augusta, Georgia. And I actually moved up here in 2008 to take advantage of that. I wasn't working as a peer support, I was working as a wilderness therapy guide at Four Circles Recovery. We care of people between 18 and 28 years old, male and female, and whoever somebody identified. So anyway, that was my first mental health substance use job up here. And then from there, I looked solidly on getting certified. A friend of mine, he was always a step ahead of me. You ever have that person in your life that they're always a step ahead of you career-wise, going like, God, I wish I had thought of that. But Jason was my mentor at the time, and he goes, I'm going to actually take the peer support course. I think there's one of those too. He did, and I did. At that time, I had transitioned to Neil Dobbins' Detox and Crisis Center. Not a big fan of shift work, never have been, especially second and third shift, oh my goodness. But from there, I was actually able to bring my ability to run groups and kind of made Neil Dobbins a more homey place to be at rather than just a clinical place with a bed in it, and you get three meals, 3 hots and a cot, and then you're gone in 2 weeks, and then somebody else comes in. I was able to start forming relationships with people. Genuine, caring, compassionate relationships. There's the value of peer support, of adding that human element to a situation where people are generally either traumatized or they just haven't done well in the system and haven't done well navigating very complex medical systems. And they don't make it easy for us even. So some of that, again, is bringing humanity back into a medical or a clinical or a scientific field. So the cool thing about peer support services in general is that it is a huge umbrella where you can do a lot of things that are considered soft skills, like holding space for somebody or instilling hope. That isn't something you normally get paid for, but it's a cool thing to get paid for. Just being able to, again, connect with the humanity of the situation. This leads me into, again, peer support is a jumping off point for a lot of intellectual pursuits, and you shouldn't be in this job and not learn something every day. Literally, I've been doing this since, again, 2007, 2008, and I always take something new home with me. It makes people feel seen, it lets people be heard, it lets a voice come out where there's no, or I can help somebody find their voice or speak with them, not for them. It's a way of relating with people that generates meaning, trust, and mutual recognition. It's deeply relational and interactive rather than procedural and clinical. That's the best way I could describe what peer support should be in an ideal form. To truly know someone, you've got to be able to get into their heads and let them into yours a little bit. It's a very vulnerable situation to be in, and that's not my thing. Usually I'm not very comfortable with that, but in this context, it's kind of comes with the job. You really want to find out about people's experiences, their values, their fears, their joys, and what do we bring to them? He says we're helping them cultivate a true presence in the world, empathetic engagement. Again, I'm not feeling sorry for this person and talking to them. They're letting me into their world to be able to walk with them, and vice versa. And there's also to generate some what I call narrative curiosity. Again, I have a short version of what attributes a peer support should have, and I call it the 3 C's. Curiosity, compassion, and commitment. You have to have all those to bring yourself to a person and sit with people, sometimes 5 or 6 people a day, 5 days a week, or weekends, or whenever we're working with this. So it's the idea of seeing somebody versus skimming somebody. You just don't want to. You don't want the superficial, right off the top. You want to be able to get into the weeds with people. And there's within peer support, there's a different ways to do it. There's what's called authentic peer support. I'm going to be with you. I'm not going to do it for you. I'm going to help you. Help yourself, and I'm going to advocate for you and help you develop efficacy. That's you doing it yourself. And there's also intentional peer support. That's sharing needs. They don't all fit together, but they're all part of the continuum. There's Medicaid peer support, which is kind of what North Carolina teaches. We've got to do certain things in order to get paid. I mean, it's a paying job in some instances when it's not a volunteer service. So again, there's things this is not a power profession, like, you're a power professional. No, I'm a professional. Peer support is my thing. I don't have a glass ceiling with it. It's like I want to bring as much to peer support as I possibly can. And again, I deeply respect other ways of helping people in this job field. But again, I'm not medical, and I don't assess, and I don't diagnose, and I don't counsel, but I do help. So this has enabled me to have, this being peer support has enabled me to have a lot of adventures, dating all the way back again to 2008 when I moved here to Asheville to do a peer support-like job. Again, it was a wilderness therapy job in the woods, but it was still pretty engaging with people, and you had to really engage in a personal level. But this is the first thing that came to my mind was the pay. So when I started, 2008, I was working 2 weeks on, well, a week on as the wilderness therapy stuff. We'd be in the woods for a week, and then you'd come off for a week because you needed a week to recover from that experience. Oh my goodness. And I picked up a side gig with an ACT team. It was Easter Seals at the time. They're still in business. And they didn't know anything about peer support. They said, well, Medicaid says we need this person on our team to be able to bill. And I'm like, okay, I knew nothing about peer support. I'm kind of cringy about it. I'm going, geez, you got away with a lot of rookie mistakes because you didn't have anybody to say otherwise. So I was going out, I was working with the ACT team, I was working 2 different economic classes actually. The wilderness therapy was $60,000 a month to be there, whether people stayed or not. If somebody's teenager, young adult, they still paid the $60,000, paying my salary. And then I was working with economically depressed situations, going to housing projects with the ACT team. So it was on and on. It was a really good learning experience because I got a lot of economic challenges with people in different economic stratas, and different levels of mental health, different levels of substance use. So I got it all my first year, and it doesn't really happen like that. And to me, assertive community treatment, an ACT team or a community support team is a really good way to learn peer support because you are out. Medicaid says I must be out in the field 80% of the time and not be in the office. So the other thing that came after working in the shop for several years, and I worked for most of the major players. I worked for RHA a couple of times. I worked for ACT. I worked for VIA. So what I did see was no peer support running peer supports. Mostly we never supervised ourselves. You didn't have a peer in charge of the team. You had somebody in the other echelons, another lane, a QP or a clinician. And I said, well, we don't have that. We don't have a grassroots level nonprofit in the area. So I started putting all these ideas together. It fermented for about another year in my brain, just what am I going to do with this? How can I do it? So the idea for Sunrise came out of that kind of evolution of that gestation period where I had to see what wasn't. It's hard to see what's not there as opposed to what's there in front of you. And sometimes it could be there in front of you and you go, oh, I didn't notice that. But again, bringing community awareness and saying peer support is a job and it is not a power profession, as they like to say. And we were able to get people's attention and able to start applying for grants. And then when they saw we were fiscally responsible in several arenas, especially our respite house, our Brother Clark respite house. When we got we really got up and running because that was kind of opening the coffers saying, hey, we do trust you as peer supports and how can we work with you? And that kind of brings us to where we're at today. Again, we started with 5 volunteers in a church basement, and now Sunrise has 80 folks, 80 peer supports. It's an extraordinarily interesting work area. And I'm super happy to be here.